Welcome to another commentary on 4D chess. Let's have a look at our 6 Pokemon. We have no hazard setters, but we have a lot of setup Pokemon, right? So the big setup Pokemon I'm looking at are Zekrom with Dragon Dance, Butterfree with Quiver Dance, and Poltegeist with Shell Smash. Shell Smash is really good. It doubles my damage output and doubles my speed, meaning that I'll always move first and hit hard. So we'll be looking to use that, perhaps Dynamaxing it, and then, killing all my opponent's Pokemon in one shot. Technically, our Espeon and Double are also setup Pokemon. Espeon gets Calm Mind and Double gets Cotton Guard. But these Pokemon have serious offensive limitations, so I don't really consider them to be setup sweepers in the same vein as the other 3. Our lead matchup is once again very favorable. We are a Zekrom electric type going up against a Barraskewda water type. And the Barraskewda doesn't have any super effective moves against me despite moving first. Since I have a super effective electric move against it, I don't hesitate to click it, and sure enough, my opponent reacts smartly by switching into their ground type Golurk. Now I can't stay in on this. This is a very obvious Earthquake coming in from the Golurk. So I'm going to switch into my flying type Butterfree, which will take no damage from the Earthquake. Admittedly, this is kind of a risky move because I know that Golurks can pack Ice Punch, which is super effective against Butterfree. But I just hope that I can get off a Quiver Dance and survive an Ice Punch before retaliating against my opponent with a super effective Energy Ball, a grass type move. Well, that did not happen. Ice Punch was a one-hit KO. Butterfree's physical defense stat is paper thin. I feel like I've said this already. Ugh. So in hindsight, this was a huge mistake. What I should have done is, instead of Quiver Dancing, I should have went for Sleep Powder. I was faster than the Golurk, and with Compound Eyes, the accuracy of Sleep Powder is nearly 100%. So that would have bought me the time I needed to set up and get off my Energy Ball. So that was a huge misplay for me. Right off the bat, I'm down 1 Pokemon. Now I managed to chip away at the Golurk here using my Acelgor's Energy Ball, but my opponent switches out into Corviknight, a very good switch, 4 times resistance to grass type attacks, and basically picks apart my Acelgor for lunch. Of course I could switch out my Acelgor here, but there aren't any good switch-ins, because Corviknights usually pack a move called U-Turn. Now U-Turn is a move that does damage and allows my opponent to swap their Corviknight out into another Pokemon. This allows them to reposition and gain the upper hand by choosing a Pokemon that deals with mine effectively. So I felt like I couldn't switch out my Acelgor here simply because no matter what I switched out into, my opponent would simply U-Turn against me and pick the Pokemon that has the best matchup against my new Pokemon. So I just randomly clicked Yawn here, expecting the Corviknight to play U-Turn here, which forces them to switch out to another Pokemon. That way I can pick a new Pokemon to come in that is hopefully better matchup against my opponent. So it was very surprising here to see my opponent actually go for Brave Bird. That's definitely overkill against my Acelgor, but more importantly, my opponent's Corviknight is now drowsy. They are forced to switch out this turn. Otherwise, their Corviknight will be rendered incapacitated by sleep. So with that in mind, knowing that my opponent is not going to deal big damage to me next turn, I'm going to bring out my sweeper, my Poltegeist. This is a free Shell Smash. They can't do anything about this. They have to switch out here, and this gives me the opportunity to boost my stats and pose a huge threat to my opponent. So my opponent finally reveals the U-turn here and switches into Clefable, a decent switch-in against my boosted Poltegeist. Neither of us have super effective moves against each other, which means we'll probably be trading blows with each other. Given that I'm boosted in stats and Clefable isn't, I expect to win this hit-to-hit, so I'm comfortable with not Dynamaxing here. Had the opponent brought out a Pokemon that threatens a one-hit KO on me before I get to act, I would have considered Dynamaxing in order to survive a hit from my opponent. Now, to my utter surprise here, my opponent Dynamaxes their Clefable. This came as a huge shock to me because Clefable isn't a Pokemon that you usually Dynamax. It doesn't have very good offensive stats, and it doesn't really benefit from firing off its max moves. But because they chose to Dynamax and I did not, they are dealing more damage to me than I am to them, so they are probably going to win this hit-to-hit. There's no point in me Dynamaxing now. In fact, my Shell Smash forced them to expend their Dynamax, meaning that I can conserve my Dynamax to turn the tables on my opponent later. So this is an advantage in our pocket that we have to keep in mind. For now, we'll let our Poltergeist drop to the Clefable and bring out our Espeon, which outspeeds the Clefable and is able to resist the Clefable pretty well because of Calm Mind. Boosting my special defense ensures that I don't take too much damage from the Max Starfall. My opponent brings out Corviknight as an answer to my potential psychic attacks, but I simply boost up in its face and prepare to fire off a Shadow Ball, which deals neutral damage to the Corviknight. You can see here that despite having a 2x special attack boost, it still takes me 2 hits to knock out the Corviknight. And I suffer a lot of damage from Brave Bird in the meantime. This is why I don't consider Espeon a very good sweeper. Its damage output just isn't quite there, and it doesn't have good elemental coverage on its offensive moves. Now my opponent brings out the Barraskewda here, which obviously outspeeds my Espeon. Normally here I would say, my Espeon has done its job, it has dispatched the Corviknight, let's sacrifice it and get a free switch in to something that can deal better against the Barraskewda. However, keep in mind that Espeon is still a very useful asset despite being at 20% HP. It has a high base speed of 228. It probably outspeeds most of my opponent's other Pokemon, so having it in my reserve to dispatch wounded Pokemon from my opponent's side might be very useful down the road. So I switch it out into my most useless Pokemon, Double. Anyone who has played with Double in random battles before knows that it is one of the worst Pokemon to have because it only has one offensive move, Body Press, which is completely resisted by Ghost-type Pokemon. And obviously my opponent still has a Golurk in their party. So all my opponent has to do here is to swap out into their Golurk and my Double can't touch them at all. Thankfully though, my opponent doesn't realize this and instead goes for a fighting type Pokemon in Throw and makes a crucial mistake by playing Circle Throw, which essentially gives my Zekrom here a free switch in. It enters the battlefield without taking any damage. This is huge. This is my opportunity. Now we need to play this very carefully. Throw may have the move Ice Punch, which would deal crippling amounts of damage to my Zekrom. So I definitely cannot play Dragon Dance here, even though I really want to. I simply cannot afford to take an Ice Punch at this stage in the game. Instead, I have to rely on my 2 attacks, both of which have severe drawbacks. My Dragon-type Outrage forces me to be locked into that move for the next 2 or 3 turns, and the Electric-type Bolt Strike has a chance to miss. Usually most players Dynamax because they want to double their hit points, or because they want the additional power or benefits that come with max moves. For me, it's a totally different and very rare reason. I'm Dynamaxing here because I'm trying to negate the downsides of my base moves. Outrage and Bolt Strike are not ideal moves to have at this juncture in the game. To further complicate matters, my opponent has hard counters to each of these moves. Their Clefable in the back, being a fairy type, is completely immune to my dragon moves, while the Golurk in the back, being a ground type, is completely immune to my electric move. So with that in mind, I'm going to proceed with Max Wyrmwind here. The thinking is that Max Wyrmwind lowers my opponent's attack by 1 stage, so if they survive the hit, their Ice Punch will do less damage. Sure enough, they survived the hit, but apparently they don't have Ice Punch. They tried to Circle Throw me, but because I was Dynamax, they could not activate the swap out effect. So I stay on the battlefield and finish off the throw using my second turn of Dynamax. Now Golurk comes in here on my final turn of Dynamax. If you were playing from my opponent's point of view, the obvious Zekrom play here is Max Wyrmwind to severely damage the Golurk and lower its attack stat. What would you do? Of course, you would switch out into Clefable. So here I make the gutsiest read of the century by attempting an electric type move against the Golurk, predicting the switch into Clefable. What happens next? Well, here's my reaction to that. Yes! Predicted! Sweet. It feels good. Oh my gosh. Wow, I won off that prediction. Wow. Honestly, I felt that that may have been a premature conceit on my opponent's part, depending on the last Pokemon, of course. I was certainly not out of the woods at that point in the game because my opponent's Barraskewda counters my Espeon, which is lower, and my opponent's Golurk hard counters my Dabu, which cannot deal damage to the Golurk at all. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this round of 4D chess. As usual, if you have comments or suggestions on what you'd like to see in future videos, let me know in the comment section. Otherwise, thanks for watching.